What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here, as always, on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and today I'm going to be wrapping up the Mighty Ducks franchise with D3, the Mighty Ducks, from 1996, starring Emilio Estevez, Jeffrey Nordling, David Selby, Heidi Kling, Joss Ackland, Joshua Jackson, Eldon Henson, Vincent LaRusso, Marguerite Moreau, Keenan Thompson, and Mike Vitar. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me today once again as we close out the Mighty Ducks trilogy here on the Casa D18 Studios channel. Today, going to be talking about D3, the Mighty Ducks, and let's just get right into it, shall we? Now, hot off the heels of their victory at the Junior Goodwill Games, the Ducks are awarded full scholarships to the Eden Hall Academy, a Minneapolis prep school that their coach Gordon Bombay once attended. However, for this new chapter in the Ducks' lives, Bombay will not be there. Gordon has been offered a job with the Junior Goodwill Games Committee, a position that he just can't refuse. Charlie, now the official Ducks captain, has a hard time with this transition. He and Bombay have been close ever since the beginning, ever since the first movie when they were District 5. And with Bombay stepping out as coach, one of the other players, one half of the Bash brothers, Dean Portman, decides not to accept the scholarship as well, choosing instead to stay in his hometown of Chicago, Illinois. In Bombay's absence, the duties of the coach have been given to former Minnesota North Stars player Ted O'Ryan. And the Ducks get off to a very rocky start at Eden Hall. They have a hard time adapting to Coach O'Ryan's two-way hockey, which is more of a defensive style than they're used to. O'Ryan completely abandons Duck traditions and their trick plays. He strips Charlie of the captaincy that he used to wear on his jersey. And the Ducks have off-ice conflicts with the varsity team, which now includes one of their own, Adam Banks. Because Banks has always been so good that when the Ducks have their first practice, Orion bumps Adam up to the varsity team. So when the Ducks play their first game as official Eden Hall Warriors, they start the game with a huge lead. It's like 9-0 going into the third period. But their opposition rallies back, showing that they were kind of playing possum for the first two periods. The game ends into a tie, which upsets Coach O'Ryan. Off-ice antics between the Ducks and the varsity team begin to reach a fever pitch. And after a traditional JV varsity dinner ends with the varsity team sticking the Ducks with the bill, the Ducks decide to retaliate by sending a bunch of Brazilian fire ants into their dorm rooms. And as a result, the two teams agree to an early morning showdown game. It's just about pride, bragging rights. There's nothing on the lines. It's unsanctioned. Varsity dominates the Ducks during the showdown until Coach O'Ryan shows up and brings the game to a halt. Coach O'Ryan confiscates the Ducks jerseys that the team is wearing during the unsanctioned game, and Charlie leaves in protest. Charlie feels that O'Ryan is taking away the best thing that any of them ever had. He is just over it. He's tried to fit into this new school. He's tried to play this new kind of hockey. Once again, much like I mentioned in the first Ducks review, the team has been together longer than Orion has been part of the team. So Orion hasn't earned the team's respect yet. And Charlie almost kind of takes over the role that Jesse had in that first movie, where he feels this level of disrespect. And why should we trust you? Why should we respect you? We have been together longer. Charlie bounces. Fulton leaves with him. The two friends end up spending the day at an amusement park. And Fulton begins to contemplate his decision of having left the team. You know, Charlie talks about going to public school for a couple years and going up to Canada for juniors because you've only got to be 17 there. Fulton's worried. He's like, you know, I may not even be able to make juniors. Because granted, he's got a great shot, but he's never been much of a skater. So Fulton begins to debate about going back. And Charlie feels that his friend, his brother almost, is turning his back on him when he needs him the most. Charlie begins to lash out at everybody. Anybody that he cares about, he's taking his frustrations out on. Much like most teenagers do when they get to that age and get frustrated. Let's be real. Begins taking it out on his mom, who's afraid he's going to wreck his educational career, much as he's thrown away his sports career. He's mad at Bombay for more or less abandoning the team. You know, go back to the first movie and how Charlie said, "You made us, you're stuck with us." And for lack of a better term here, better analogy, Charlie feels like Gordon's just dropped the team off on an orphanage steps after, you know, giving birth to this thing and then deciding they don't want it. Orion's coaching styles, he's fighting. And he even ends up taking his frustrations out on Hans. Hans has always been a friend, a mentor to Charlie and Bombay before him. Hans and Charlie sit together one night listening to the Ducks play on the radio. And as Hans kind of jokingly mocks Charlie about having lost his C, Charlie just almost snaps at Hans. Little does he know that Hans is ill. And as Charlie leaves, we hear Hans tell Charlie goodbye. Casey, Charlie's mom, is trying to find Charlie. And when he finally shows up at her restaurant that she works at, she has to tell him that Hans has passed away. At the funeral, Bombay returns, having missed the first third or so of the movie. And at the funeral, he places a jersey on top of Hans's coffin. The old District 5 Ducks jersey. Back of it says Hans with the number 11. The next morning, Gordon wakes Charlie up at 6 a.m. Spends some time with his friend. Charlie just wants Gordon to go away. You know, he's lost his team. He's lost Hans. He doesn't want to be bothered by anybody. But Gordon persuades him, and Gordon takes him back to Eden Hall Academy. And they watch Coach Orion take the ice with this young girl in a wheelchair. The girl in the wheelchair is Coach Orion's daughter. And we learn why Coach Orion never stayed in the major leagues, why he never stayed in the NHL. Coach Orion and his daughter were in a car. Car got sideswiped. Daughter ended up confined to a wheelchair. So when the North Stars decided to leave Minnesota to become the Dallas Stars, Orion stayed behind. His daughter's doctors were in Minnesota. His daughter's friends were in Minnesota. Didn't want to disrupt her treatment. He chose her over his career. And Gordon tells Charlie that when he talked to Orion about taking over as the coach of the Ducks, he told him that Charlie was the heart and the soul of the Ducks, the true Minnesota Miracle Man. Charlie is moved to tears, touched by Bombay's words. Charlie decides that he needs to rejoin his team. Ducks are getting ready to leave on a bus trip for a road game. And Charlie returns, tells Coach Orion that he wants to play two-way hockey. Orion, shocked by this change in attitude with Charlie, decides to allow Charlie to come back. But before they can depart, Dean Buckley, the headmaster of Eden Hall, addresses the kids, tells them that the following day, the board of directors is going to vote to revoke their scholarships. Orion demands to speak to Buckley. And Buckley's like, I've said all I need to say. Orion's like, no, now. So they step off the bus, and Orion just can't believe that the dean is going to give up on these kids like this. And Buckley tells Orion that with the Ducks gone, you'll be able to pick your own team, your own kids that'll play your style, listen to you, not be such rebellious teenagers. Orion stands by the Ducks. This is my team. This is the kids I want to coach. And he threatens resignation. Buckley tells Orion that he'll be missed, basically accepting the resignation. At the board meeting the next day, Bombay shows up again as legal counsel this time for the Ducks. He's not Coach Bombay anymore. Now he's back to being Lawyer Gordon, the successful 30-0 guy that we saw in the first movie, kind of bringing his arc full circle. And he points out to the board and to Buckley that the scholarships became legally binding contracts upon the signature of the recipients. So they will be in breach of contract if they choose to revoke these scholarships. It tells him that he will tie this thing up in court for years. He'll collect damages, and he will win because he received a good education from this school, from Eden Hall, kind of throwing it back in their faces. And the board decides that they don't want the Eden Hall name dragged through the mud, so they relent and they vote to reinstate the scholarships. Allows the Ducks to continue their education. Bombay's getting ready to depart again, and he tells Charlie that if he needs anything, call me. I have some business I have to take care of in Chicago, but I'll be back in a couple of days. The team celebrates their legal victory, and the varsity team confronts them again, because Eden Hall has a traditional junior varsity game, and it's coming up. After that unsanctioned game, varsity feels they're just going to mop the floors with the Ducks. So they confront them and begin taunting them. Charlie speaks up, and he tells them, they had an unfair advantage last time. You had one of us. You had Banks. So they're like, fine, take him. Never had the heart of a warrior anyways. Begone, peasant. Russ then pipes in and tells the varsity team that when we win this game, the Warriors die and the Ducks fly. Because Linda, who's a girl that goes to Eden Hall Academy, who Charlie's kind of been crushing on, has been trying to get the demeaning warrior name changed. This presents an opportunity to do that, allow the Ducks to reign supreme, scoring Charlie a few brownie points with this girl that he likes. Prior to the official showdown, Orion seems to change a little bit in his mentality and the way he conducts business. He begins to not train them so much like warriors, but like ducks. And one of the main things that he teaches them is how to clear the trash in front of the net. Tells them that varsity is vultures around the net. They don't get you with that first shot, but the second, the third, they bang in the junk. This drill allows them to learn to clear that out so that varsity doesn't get the rebounds. And then just before the big game, he gives the team back their duck jerseys. As the game begins, varsity dominates on offense, but the Ducks are able to play aggressive defense, like Orion has taught them, keeping varsity from scoring any goals. After 2 periods in the game, score 0-0. No score. During the second intermission, Josh, the announcer for the Eden Hall radio broadcasts, brings in NHL player and Ducks captain at the time, Paul Correa. And him and Paul have a nice little segment there. And Correa talking about how, the Ducks have heart. I'm curious what's going on in the locker room. We cut to the locker room, and Orion is telling the team how proud he is of them. How they're doing everything right. Just keep up what you're doing, and we can hold this out. Averman makes a comment about how it's going to take a miracle for them to keep holding on. And the door opens, and in walks Dean Portman, the other Bash brother. Bash brothers are reunited, man, and the Ducks have a needed spark going into that third period. The Ducks are holding the Warriors off, but late in the game, the Ducks take 2 back-to-back penalties, giving the varsity a 5-on-3 advantage for the final 2 minutes of the game. And during the timeout, Orion talks to Charlie. He tells him, look, if you got the shot, take it. Don't be too careful, but don't be too careless. We can do this. And he gives Charlie back his captaincy on his jersey. And that gives Charlie the sense of determination and pride that he's been missing ever since that got stripped from him. He realizes now that Orion sees in him what Bombay saw in him. With seconds left, Charlie gets the puck, goes on a breakaway. He's beating the defense, has an opening, and he passes the puck back to Goldberg. And for those of you going, but Goldberg's the goalie, you have to remember that in this film, because Julie was such a great goaltender, Goldberg got bumped into a playing role once Charlie left. Julie became the number 1 goalie. So Goldberg gets the puck, flings off his shot, makes the game-winning goal, and the Ducks defeat the varsity team. Charlie and Orion hug each other on the ice after the game. Charlie looks up and he sees Gordon in the crowd. Gordon looks towards the Eden Hall Warriors logo, and Charlie's eyes follow, and boom. A banner drops right in front of it with the Eden Hall Ducks logo. Bombay departs with a smile on his face as the Ducks celebrate their victory for the third time on the ice. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatBoyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. Another one. Very, very emotional roller coaster in this film. And once again, to help me discuss it, none other than the man, the myth, the legend, the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham. Thank you for joining me here once again as we round out the Mighty Ducks Saga here on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I know we've talked at great length the last couple of days about how much these movies are near and dear to both of our hearts. D3 is dark. Not overall darkness, but it definitely has its moments there where it kind of veers into what's going on here territory. Like, this is too grown for a kid's movie. Between the way the team feels abandoned by Bombay, like I said, like a newborn being dropped off on an orphanage steps by their mother, who's just not ready to take care of it anymore. Between the car accident backstory of Orion and his daughter, the death of Hans. There's so much here that's too grown for a kid's movie. But I feel like the other two movies maybe were a little too lighthearted, that as the kids got older, they needed a little something more adult to kind of ground them some, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if this is the right one to do after 2 days of WrestleMania. I'm emotionally exhausted as it is. It's been a long ass week. It's finally over today. Thank God, between this and today's Talk Wrestling. And I might be covering Raw again. I haven't decided if I'm going to watch. I watched Raw last week and I have regrets. It's been a very interesting 8-9 days for sure. Yeah, this one gets a little heavy. I mean, referencing Back to the Future there, wink, wink, honk, honk. But
great Scott, this is heavy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really gets me the most, and I forgot to mention this on Saturday when we talked about the first one, the moment in the movie for me is Hans and Gordon at the end, with the music swelling, and Gordon shakes Hans' hand and thank you, Hans. And Hans looks with him with all the pride of a real father and goes, "I'm proud of you, Gordon." They embrace, and I'm a mess, and it's waterworks. And it ties directly into the moment where Casey tells Charlie that Hans has passed, and we see the memorial, and we see this jersey with Hans's name on it draped over the casket, much like a state leader gets the flag draped over or whatever. That's how important and vital to the Ducks that Hans is.
Very much so.
And it completely wrecks me every time I watch this movie. It doesn't matter if I'm 10 or 100. It's going to keep doing it. It's just so emotional. That's tough. You said the initial feeling of abandonment from the Ducks, by Gordon. I mean,
and especially the long-term Ducks.
Well, right, Charlie.
The Ducks that just joined in the second movie,
right?
They don't feel it as much.
No.
They're like Russ says. My dad says I need to stay here or I'm getting my butt whooped.
Right.
It's like, we love Gordon. Don't get us wrong, but they don't have the emotional attachment.
No,
that the rest of them do.
Especially Charlie, and to a lesser extent Fulton. I agree with that. It's really funny to think about the arc then and the arc how it's gone, because we all thought Gordon had moved beyond, being all about the money and being all about, the prestige. And here he is, man, 10 minutes in, he's back on his boys. And granted, the Junior Games is a great organization. They're very much, all about the children, and that's great. But Bombay ain't going for no money. That ain't happening. It's a great opportunity. He says it himself directly to Charlie on that waterfront. He'd be a fool to pass it up. It's like, well, yeah, but your boys are getting, especially this one. This kid's been, latched onto your teat for the better part of 4 years. Now you're gonna make him suck a new cow. That's fucked up.
It's like, you have basically been this boy's father,
right? Yeah.
Granted, between part 1 and part 2, Casey got remarried, but Bombay was always there as a constant in Charlie's life.
Right. And
when Charlie's dad walked out on him and Casey, Bombay, with virtually no hesitation.
No.
There was that little bit in the beginning where Bombay was still a dick.
Right.
But once he found his way again, he came in there and he pulled that boy, took him under his wing, nursed him, like you said, taught him to fly.
Yeah. Which is what you learn if you are a young, I forget what a young bird is called. When you're learning to fly, before you have to be thrown out of the nest and either plummet to the floor or fly out of that tree as a shining star. Gordon got Charlie out of the nest. Yes, his mom Casey did a wonderful job doing Casey things, having to, no other choice. But Gordon was the one, like you said, taught him to fly. And I will say this. Yes, Casey remarried between 1 and 2, even though there was a glimpse of a romance as Gordon boarded the bus to the minor leagues. You notice Jan says Charlie's been spending most of his time here since she got remarried. So A, that tells us that Charlie's not happy with the arrangement. B, it's telling Gordon, you screwed up. Look what you could have had.
Pretty much.
And again, Jan's not trying to be a dick, because Jan knows that Gordon was chasing his dream. He always wanted to play professional hockey as a kid. And because of his connection with the Stars, he got that. And good on him for trying. And he may have gone farther. Like we said, we did this ad nauseum yesterday. If that guy had taken his knee out, who knows what would have happened. So main thing is the story wouldn't have happened. We had no movie. 10-minute prologue. That's it. Good night. Now featuring the Lion King. Anyway, it's 94. It works. Trust me, I know it's 94 because summer 95, every graduating 6th grade class or whatever sang the damn Circle of Life song. Anyway, Jesus Christ. So this one, like you said, gets heavy in a hurry. I mean, Gordon leaves, boom, within the first 10 minutes.
And with Bombay's departure is the departure of Portman.
Right.
Which makes Fulton feel abandoned.
Right.
He finally had somebody who understood him. That was his best buddy. Again, no disrespect to Charlie, who Fulton kind of bonded with in the first movie.
Right.
And then their friendship came back to the forefront in this film.
Yes.
But for 99.9% of part 2, it was the Bash brothers were inseparable, man.
Oh, yeah.
They even shared a dorm room together.
Yeah.
They went out for ice cream together, ignoring curfew.
Oh, yeah.
They were inseparable. So for Portman to just up and bounce, Fulton had that abandonment too, which may be part of why he came back to Charlie in the first place.
Right. And you have to remember, the Charlie's arc in this is so a teenager thing. He's rebelling. He doesn't want any part of change. He is one, and the fact that he actually thinks he's got himself convinced he can drop out of private school, do public for a couple of years, and then play juniors. I'm like, it's like Charlie, bud, you were there 3 years ago when you were the freaking hapless wonder that Gordon molded you into. Without Gordon and without clear direction in your head, you'll be lucky if you can get a second-rate pair of skates in Canada, let alone a spot on a juniors team. Come on, brother. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, for real. So very, very much a teenage thing. I'm going to do what I want because I'm a rebel because everything sucks. Like, dude, you're a teenager. It gets better. Shut the hell up and get over it. Like, for real.
Yeah, before Bombay, he was Spazway.
Exactly. And even the great powerful Clark, who I can't stand, it's Spazway, he'll screw up. And sure enough, he did. So without Gordon's guidance and without giving Orion the opportunity to do the same, he's a hapless, directionless wonder. And Fulton, in his infinite, not really giving a shit about anything, he sees it. He's like, dude, just come back with me. I'm like, come on. The Ducks it'll be okay. And no, I'm not going back. Go. Fine, I don't need you. It's like, dude, you're such a teenager. Just shut the hell up. Like, God, I don't need anybody. Like, all right. So when you want to eat and have money, I'll see you in 5 minutes at your mom's house. Got it.
Pretty much. It's like Charlie comes to his senses in 3, 2, 1.
What's so dumb?
Set your clocks by it.
But what's so dumb? It's not the fact that Orion basically he feels forces him out. It's not the fact that Fulton goes back. It's not even Hans's death that snaps him out of his shit. It's Gordon telling him all those things, plus me telling Orion, you were the heart and soul of the team. You were the Minnesota Miracle Man. So you almost see the eyes hit the light bulb, like, dang, like, oh shit, I better go back there and make everything right. Very much like the arc that Gordon had. Gordon went into the depths of darkness as soon as his hockey career was over because of that one missed opportunity. And he let his life go to complete shit. And Gordon, as he shows Charlie his Greg Brady haircut, he says that in the film. It's funnier than hell. Watch it back. But he tells him, the greatest thing that happened to me, I was drinking. I got busted. That's what it is for both of them. It takes a complete deviation into darkness for that silver lining to appear. So I think it's a great little tie of the bow, if you will, between 1 and 3. Much like, for the longest time, A New Hope didn't connect to Jedi until they tied that bow of Jabba the Hutt and Boba Fett in there in the first one. They go back to the first one in this one. The movie opens with the montage of both movies. I think it's very well done, by the way. And I actually used that theme on the preview I did last weekend with me in this jersey and everybody going, he's wearing a Ducks jersey. Oh God, oh God, oh God.
Hell has officially frozen over. First, the Eagles get back together in the 90s and hell freezes over. And then Jeff puts on a Ducks jersey and hell freezes over again.
I walked to the living room last weekend carrying it in from delivery. My dad looked and literally almost rushed. I'm like, it's the movie jersey. Shut up. Like, Jesus Christ. Now,
I was going to say, he would have shit bricks if you had this.
Yeah, if I wore your jersey, I may have been sleeping on the porch for a week. Just throwing it out there now.
Even if it did say Bombay or Hall or Conway on the back of it.
Yeah.
Your dad sees you in this and you are disowned.
Yeah. I'm not so dumb as to walk through the house wearing Korean Slana he likes, but the later Ducks in that jersey, and you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I love the threads being pulled together. It's very much, again, I keep comparing it to Back to the Future. Every thread they've laid down, one way or the other, got picked up and resolved.
Yeah.
And it's almost morbid. They needed the shot in the ass of Hans dying for Charlie especially, but also Gordon, to have to come back and reconcile his own shit with Charlie and with the team. Because
I remember behind the scenes properly, Emilio did not want to do a third film.
He didn't at all.
And it wasn't until they gave him the script and they were like, look, you're not going to be heavily featured in it like you were the first two.
Right.
And these are the ways we're going to bring your character back into the film.
Right.
You know, tying up those threads.
Yep.
Where Emilio was like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, because you think about his screen time, he gives a speech in the beginning during the credits, leaving the Ducks with Eden Hall.
Well, that's what you don't see on screen.
Yeah. Then he doesn't come back until the funeral to have that moment with Charlie. And then he disappears to Chicago to go get Portman, and he doesn't come back until the game.
Yeah. And doesn't say a word at the game. It's all the look, the nod, and then as they're celebrating, he's walking to the locker room, just walking back and walking into the sunset, for lack of a better term. There's no actual sunset, but walking off into his destiny. Or density. But it's a very well written part for him. If he didn't want to be part of it, it's so perfectly done the way they lay it out with him.
Because Emilio wanted to go more behind the scenes,
right? He did,
you know, as opposed to his brother Charlie, who kept his career going, and we all know about Charlie Sheen shenanigans. That's another 3.5 hour feature that we could do right there. So we won't go there. But
Charlie Sheen, Eat Your Hollywood Story.
Emilio in the mid '90s was very much going to more of a behind the scenes role. You figure, you know, if you've seen the first Mission Impossible, it's like he died before the opening credits.
Right.
He straight up was the Drew Barrymore of that film. You know, he was part of like the first big scene. Dead. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Emilio saw longevity in behind the scenes, which is very true. You have to remember, he had been running hard for a long time. All the Brat Pack movies, the Young Guns movies, the Ducks movies, and everything else he'd done prior to, you know, D3 and even a little bit after D3, he did the right thing by his career to not stay in front of the camera full time the last 25 years. Yeah. Because it's much like in wrestling. Yeah, you can wrestle every night of the week till you're blue in the face and until you're blowing up, you know, quicker than Greg Valentine would, because he at least 45. But long-term injuries, long-term comfort in your life ain't gonna happen on the road 300 days a year. It will happen if you're in a suit and tie in the office to give events advice. It will happen if you're in a suit and tie on the road helping guys produce their matches. And that's what Emilio Estevez saw. And like you said, Charlie kept his career going and lost his damn mind. He's just now not constantly brought up anymore because he hasn't done a lot of crazy shit lately. But there was a time where if there was fodder to be had in a celebrity, must be Charlie. You know, very much different than Emilio.
Sheen, for the record, not Conway. Let's make sure we're being clear, since we're talking about a film series where Charlie is the main character.
Yeah. Charlie Sheen's career and his brother Emilio Estevez's career could not be more different.
Polar opposites.
And you know what? It all shows in decision making. Mm-hmm. And Emilio, once this movie was wrapped and done, he very much took a step back. I can't recall anything major he's done until the new Duck series. He's popped in on stuff here and there. I'm not gonna lie, I've seen him in
I was gonna say, I know he's done a few things. His filmography, I actually looked into it, and his filmography does have a few things
right
between D3 and now. But like you said, it's nothing extravagant. It's nothing, you know, major motion picture blockbuster.
Yeah, he hasn't had to be the guy on those films. And to be fair to him, the first two Ducks movies, and we talked about this yesterday, they're a lot of the same story. It's very much Emilio's, you know, rise,
fall, and redemption of Gordon Bombay.
So it's like the entire movie, both of them rested on Emilio being Emilio and being Gordon. At least this one, it was, and we talked about this when we did recap to start the show, to start the month, and when we did Saturday show. Charlie's arc is right here. This is Charlie's day. This is Charlie being told, I would say somewhat accurately, that he was indeed the true Minnesota Miracle Man. Yes, Gordon brought them together. Yes, Gordon coached them. Charlie was the one that adopted the C and really grabbed the team, put him on his back, and went down the rink. Now, that's why I bought my Team USA jersey as Charlie, because it was really D2. He really stepped into that role. Yes, this movie is very much him underappreciating his teammates, underappreciating coaching, whoever it may be, and not realizing that even though Hans sits right there next to him, withering away, telling him so, you're the heart of the team, man. Come on, get it together. So I enjoy the arc of this movie so much that, as strange as it's going to sound for me to say it now, because I've always said lower of the movie in the past, I'm gonna when we get to the rankings, it's going to be very similar to where I've been all weekend.
We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
Merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatBoyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. When we discussed the other films, we talked about which character you related to the most in that one. Who do you feel in this film you really relate the most to as far as their development, their growth, and their place in the film?
Oh, man.
If you need a minute, I can go first this time.
Yeah. Please go first.
You know, my love for Fulton Reed is definitely been documented.
Right.
You know, and the way that he talks to Charlie, you know, about his doubts and his desires, I totally feel Fulton there. As far as this movie goes, I definitely feel more like Banks in this one.
Okay.
And that may be surprising because Banks isn't as featured as he is in the other two. He's definitely more background here. I mean, you can even see in the graphic that is up behind us, you know, Banks is back in the distance there.
Yeah.
Partially because of his height and the way they wanted to frame the shot, but you can see he's like way in the distance there. And I feel like I relate to that when it comes to this one because I saw this one really late. Like, I did not see D3 when it first came out.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see D3 until VHS probably a good 3 or 4 years later.
Oh, wow.
Because D2 to me was such a perfect movie. It didn't need a third part.
Right.
So part of me not seeing this one was out of rebellion, much like Charlie is rebelling in this film.
Yes.
But then when I finally saw it, the first thing I took away from it was the death of Hans and how beautifully handled that was.
Yes.
You know, Joss Ackland gets like maybe 5 minutes of screen time in this film.
Yeah.
But I'll be damned if you can't take your eyes off of him the entire time he sits there.
I know.
Trying to pull Charlie together.
Yep.
But Banks being so good that he gets promoted to varsity and then still not being accepted by them because he's a duck.
Yes.
And almost feeling like Jesse was right all along and not being able to trust Adam because now He's varsity. He's with the other team.
Once again, Adam's the outsider.
At least until Charlie steps up in his captain motif with the varsity and tells him, you had an unfair advantage last time. You had one of us. You kind of knew our strengths, our weaknesses, our secrets. You had one of us. I very much relate to Banks in this one, and like being there but not fully being trusted because due to circumstances beyond his control, he's kind of turned his back. And even when he tries to tell the guys about the whole restaurant thing, I didn't know, they don't believe him. He's varsity now. When they go in with the liquid nitrogen, double power on Banksy.
Yeah.
He's one of them now.
Sorry, Cake Eater. For me, this is going to sound funny after what I said on Saturday rather. Goldberg for me. Goldberg, he knows his place. He knows what he is. He's got a safe spot. He'll always be relied on to be there, and now he's not. And he has to, again, like we talked about, with Adam, adapt or perish. And to his credit, he became a hell of a defensive player. And, of course, the moment at the end where everybody collective gasp that Goldberg does the offensive win for the game. It's like, what? And the one thing I will say bad about Goldberg's arc is there's not one of these movies where he's not in some sort of physical peril. Like the first movie, Gordon ties him to the damn net and they shoot the shit out of him with pucks. And the second and third one, he skates off course. It's a complete train wreck. Poor kid. So it's, I ID with Goldberg across the saga, honestly. But this one, definitely in this one because he's the established, and now he has to learn new. It's exactly how I felt when I left No DQ and then came back. It's like, oh, I'm not really required here. You've got all these other. Oh, okay. I'm now a good utility player for Aaron. They bring me in the clutch. I'm okay with that. Goldberg's very much utility player in D3.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can ask with him. I got this. So as far as my stars,
yes,
4.5. Again, I've said it all weekend, really, but for the longest time it was always 2, 1, 3, and there was a distinct distance between 1 and 3 for me. But I have really grown to appreciate how understated, underappreciated D3 is. And I think it's a damn good story being told. There's a lot of shit that, granted, when it came out, I was 13, so I was okay with processing it. But you're right. D3 is very much not your typical Disney kids movie. There's some heavy crap these kids got to deal with, both on screen and off screen if you're a fan. It's a lot. It's a lot to untangle in 2 hours, man.
Depending on the month, I was 19 or 20 when this came out.
And even still, as a late teens, early 20s, you're a fan of the series, you're going, she's great. So it's very heavy, but I don't discount the good story, the great storytelling, and
definitely
the good stuff that's involved. And again, is it really a necessary sequel? No, it's not. It's one of those trilogies that, does it really need to be a trilogy? No, it doesn't. But what they do give us makes up for the fact that we resented it being a trilogy in the first place. So I'm okay.
Agreed. I'm gonna knock it down just a smidgy. I'm gonna go 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I'm not going a huge step down here because I do pretty much echo your sentiments about how underrated and how unappreciated it is.
Right.
I think what takes it down that little half step for me, and granted, it's redeemed, but how much of a child Charlie acts like in this movie.
Oh, God, yes.
I seriously almost hate him for a small span of this film because he is just so your average teenager.
Yep.
Where everybody else is trying to grow and expand and learn new things and adapt to their surroundings. You know, you look at a kid like Russ Tyler from South Central Los Angeles in the midst of a prep school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you want to talk about polar opposites. He's in there, man. He's trying to hustle. He's trying to learn. You take a guy like Goldberg, who's had to adapt to a completely new position because his place between the pipes has been compromised, and he's learning and he's growing. You take somebody like even Banksy, who has been the standout star throughout the entire franchise. He gets bumped up to varsity and tries to learn and adapt to being on the varsity team and flying without the rest of his duck brethren and sisters. And Charlie almost reverts back to the childish shenanigans from the first movie.
Yep. Terrible.
And it just gets under my skin.
Yeah, it really does.
So that's the only reason I bump it down to 4 stars out of 5.
Right.
I do like the relationship with him and Linda that they
yeah,
build throughout the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cute, you know, seeing this girl who is completely anti-sports in the beginning.
Oh my God, yes.
And after talking a little bit with Charlie and realizing that he isn't your average jock, you start seeing her in the crowd, coming up, supporting him, watching the games, to the point where him and his team fight her fight to try to get the warrior name changed and becomes the Eden Hall Ducks thanks to their victory.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to get out there, folks, on social media. Try and get those hashtags trending. Hashtag Casa D18 Studios, hashtag Renegades Reviews, hashtag Renegade Returns, and of course, hashtag Jeff Meacham Network. Jeff, thank you very much for joining me throughout these hashtag shenanigans
I see what you're
that
doing.
we have endured here on the last few episodes.
Yeah, it's
the
been
Mighty
one of those,
Ducks trilogy.
It's one of those things where, you know, it was a nice respite from the craziness of the last week plus, because you guys all seen it unfold. It's WrestleMania week is definitely tough. It's more tough when you're doing things like we do. So I appreciate the input from everybody. I appreciate the feedback. And again, when you're watching this, leave your comments over to the side during the premiere. Leave them underneath below. We'll definitely get back to you on these. We'll definitely get back to you. I'll definitely get back to you Back to the Future because I love both these movies so much. But I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to what you're doing tomorrow because I've never seen these movies, and I'm interested to watch them just so I can understand what the hell you're talking about.
You mean this movie right here that I'll be reviewing tomorrow, right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, on another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews.
There you go.
We dive into the all-star action flick that is The Expendables.
Yes, sir. I love it. I love it.
Starring Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, Jet Li, Mickey Rourke, Dolph Lundgren, Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the Texas Rattlesnake himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And if that is not a testosterone-filled movie,
right?
I don't know what is.
Yeah, I love that you got away from wrestling-centric month on your channel. There's been at least one movie in every trilogy so far that you've had wrestlers at least mildly or prominently featured.
Not
even
every trilogy.
Yeah, even
not
John
every
Wick.
trilogy.
Yeah. Back to the Future.
There wasn't any in Back to the Future.
I'll have to look at that. I'm pretty sure there was.
There's not any in the Ducks.
But again, but
the Ninja Turtles trilogy, Kevin Nash is Super Shredder.
Yes.
The John Wick trilogy, Kevin Nash is a Russian bodyguard, bouncer.
Yes.
Expendables, we get Stone Cold in the first one and Ronda Rousey in the third one.
There you go.
So that series is bookended.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, there's definitely
Maybe I'm thinking of a stunt person in the other trilogies. So I remember somebody in wrestling
maybe
part of those two, but again, I haven't slept in a week. Me
it's
alone.
all good. So thank you again, Jeff, for joining me for the Mighty Ducks trilogy. Thank you to you, the fans, who have been viewing and supporting me through all this. Like Jeff said, make sure you leave your comments in the comment box below or over here next to Jeff as the live stream goes on. For those of you that actually do watch the live stream, granted, most of you watch it on demand. Either way, thank you for the views. And until what's that?
We do appreciate watching these over the weekend because I made sure Jay moved them up an hour just so I wouldn't be, WrestleMania all over them because I want to make sure these got watched because I love these movies and they deserve a proper platform. Damn it, all the hell.
Thank you. If only WWE hadn't changed WrestleMania, then it would have been uncontended. But it is what it is.
I agree, but the pandemic is a thing, unfortunately.
So thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.